when I walked up the aisle in March 12th of 1995, March 11th is when I prayed to God on an airplane. March 12th, I drove to church with a suspended license. Um, I was out there, and I walked up the aisle. I went. Actually, they asked if anyone want prayer, and I raised my hand. And it's the first time I ever can remember knowing and asking somebody to pray for me. And now it's like every day, thank you, please pray for me, please pray for me. I'm a prayer beggar, but it's because please pray for me, please pray for me. I'm a pauper of prayer, but nah, and that they asked if anyone prayer. I raised my hand, and the brother came and prayed for me. And when he prayed for me, just hit me. And I was at the time I had asked Christ in my heart in a dorm room like a few years earlier, but there was no follow up, there was no discipleship, so it's really no change. And I was kind of just still living in actually in a worse space. But when he prayed, and I was questioning who Christ was, because you had Jehovah's Witnesses coming to me, all these people coming to me telling this false doctrines, and you're in sin, and sin can deceive you. But I asked, when I finished that prayer, it was no shadow of a doubt who Christ was. One, I had dark circles under my eyes, literally. They supernaturally evaporated. My hair was limp from just unhealthiness and sin and stench, and just my hair just coiled up. I got a pep in my step. At the end of the service, they said, they asked if anyone want to join the church. No, they asked if anyone want to get saved. And I said in my heart, I said, Lord, I believe I'm already saved. Because I had committed my life to Christ. But I walked up the aisle of the church for the first time I ever walked up the church aisle. And I went in the back, and the man was like, you need to, either said prayer. I think he said prayer of salvation or something. So I prayed it. When I finished that prayer, I looked in the man's eyes, in the minister's eyes, and I can tell you, through the gift of the spirit of discernment of diverse spirits, which talks about in the book of Corinthians, I saw God. It was very clear. I was looking in his eyes like, wow. And then there was a girl I was dating, and I'm not trying to put her on the spot if she's watching or whatever. It could have been in my eyes a month earlier. You know what I'm saying? But when I looked in her eyes, I saw something totally different. And God began to show me. He was like, Hans, you've been. He gave me the whole analogy of like a record spinning, and you've been hearing one side of the record all these years, but you don't know there's a B side. There's another tune on the other side, and I'm gonna just turn this record over. I'm paraphrasing it, and I began to see that God was speaking on the other side, on the B side of the record. I was hearing the A side, and I thought the A side was all it was. But the A side was a whole path of death, man. And the B side was a path of life. And so at that time, I was living on South Street with two girls. One I was in a relationship with, and one that was like, her best friend or whatever. And God told me, and that just the fact that God speaks to you is supernatural, especially when God hasn't been speaking. You know what I'm saying? And God's talking to your heart. I don't know what's more supernatural than that. And God says to you, he says to me, Hans, now, I kept my promise, because I think I had prayed like 2 months earlier or something. I was doing a release party, and I may have said a prayer like, God, if you do this for me, I'll do. I don't know. But he said, I healed you. Now I want you to do this for me. Basically, I want you to lead this girl. I was like, whoa, and that took a good 2 weeks to really manifest before I was gone. I tried it the first day, and it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. But just in that 2-week period, I had several supernatural encounters. One encounter I had, I was in the room that was, I guess you could say, our bedroom. And I was reading the book of Proverbs in the Bible. I was reading the book of Proverbs. And there's a scripture where it talks about the girl with the incense, and all these lustful things. And I'm looking at the text, and then I'm looking up in the room, and I'm looking in the text, and I'm looking up in the room, and it was like the Holy Spirit just fell on me. He was like, Hans, this is where you are, young man. This is where you are. And then the other thing that happened is I didn't own any Christian records. I didn't know what gospel music was or Christian music, or there's an industry called Christian music. What is that? So I walked down South Street to Tower Records, the old Tower Records, and I bought my first gospel, quote unquote, gospel album, which was Kirk Franklin's The Reason Why We Sing. And man, when I heard that music, it was like God opened my spiritual ears to hear what was in it. And it was like angels in there. And that's the only way I can describe it. But then when I would listen to music that was what we call mainstream music, I would hear a total another type of spirit in there. Now somebody could say, you're going too far, but that's what I experienced. I turned on the TV and flip through the channels and be like, whoa. Then I turn on the TBN and be like, wow. And I'm gonna fast forward a little bit about this experience that some people may to me, it blew my mind, even now. So when I leave the girls' apartment, or I left the apartment with the two girls, I got an apartment on Catherine, like what, 7th and Catherine, 8th and Catherine. I didn't want to leave South Philly. I should have left South Philly. It wasn't a good place for me at the time, but that's a whole other story. But I leave down there and I'm living there, and I had about $3,000 to my name when I left the apartment. Had an album get ready to drop, and I get a job as a janitor. Now I was I had this album, getting ready to drop, spinning on the record. Then I'm working I'm at 12th Street Gym as a janitor. And I'm making like $8 an hour, probably, something like that. Crazy, low money. Well, needless to say, in a little bit of time, the money ran out. I'm selling clothes to like thrift stores on South Street, trying to eat. And my cable goes off. So one day I come home, and I didn't know a lot of Christians. I knew the cross movement and like maybe 3 people from my church. I didn't know any Christians. I didn't have a fellowship connection. I didn't have like a support chain, and I didn't have like people I could hang out and go break bread with and all that kind of. No, I was sitting in this apartment like, why in the world? What am I doing? What happened in my life? I don't know anybody. God told me to leave everybody. I've left everything I know, and now I'm getting attacked like crazy in my mind, and I don't understand it. And so I'm sitting there like, and the one thing that gave me some solace in the Lord, one of the things that encouraged me, is I would watch Christian television, and that would help me to get through some things, on those tough days. But the cable got shut off. I came home, and back then TBN was on. It wasn't on, UHF or V. They didn't have their own networking for that. It was on cable. Well, do you know, I come home, my cable is off. I'm talking about black. Channel 3, Channel 6, nothing. Channel 10, nothing. 17, BT, and whatever, nothing. You know the one channel that was on and stayed on with my cable cut off? Supernaturally, God kept TBN from me. No other channel in cable. My cable was off.
Yeah.
But he kept that on because he understood I really needed that to help me through some difficult things. So that to me alone is a supernatural experience. But then I'm going to say maybe a couple more. For time's sake, I'll stop. But when I was, God told me to leave the music industry in the way that I was a part of it. He told me to let go of the music. He told me I'm walking home from like 12th Street Gym one day. I'm walking, and he's telling me these scriptures that I had never read. He's telling me about the scriptures in the Old Testament where they're telling them to burn the unclean things and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, then I go home and I read it after he told it to me.
Wow.
So I'm like, whoa. I was like, and sometimes people say, God needs you to read his word for him to be able to speak to you. No, God can say anything to you whenever he wants to, however he wants to. But it is smart to read the word so you can, in your limitedness, be able to hear him speak. But God don't need you to read for him to speak to you. And so But I was wrestling with it. I was wrestling with that whole thing of giving up this idol, this one thing that, the girl was one thing, but now you're telling me to let go of my idol, the thing that gave me a type of purpose, the thing that I went to for, rejection, the thing that gave me affirmation, the thing that let me have some shine, and God's like, no, let go of it. And so I was on the fence about it, to be quite frank with you. And so I remember one day I stayed in the house and I had called, I hadn't yet called the station now. They were banging the record like crazy on power, right? And they were banging like crazy on YouTube, on not on the video jukebox. They didn't have YouTube. And I'd be walking home, walking in somewhere, and the new record that just came out, be playing in somebody's radio. Then like, somebody would call me like, "Yo, I just heard your new record is crazy," and all this temptation is coming like, "Yo," and then God is looking at me like, "Hans, I'm calling you right now." I'm like, "Why now, Lord?" And I'm talking to the Lord like, "Lord, if you let me blow up, then I can lead more people to you." You know what I mean? I'm making these bargains with God, and God is like, "No, I don't need you to do that. I need you to be obedient to me." So one day I'm sitting there like I'm being disobedient. I'm like, because I know they're gonna play the record, and I kind of, I guess, in my flesh wanted to hear them play it. So I'm sleeping one night and listening to Power 99. Well, like later on that night, I fall asleep, and the song comes on from another artist that was on the record, because it was like a compilation record. It was a group I had put out. And that song comes on the radio, man. And I can tell you the evil that I felt coming to I can't even call it an apartment, my little studio. Oh my gosh, woke me up out my sleep. That was one experience. And God let me hear it. God took away I can't say, he took away my natural hearing and super sensitized my spiritual hearing. It was like, this is really what's in this, just so you understand. I want you to be really understanding and comprehending how serious this is. Because I think God did that, Kev, and I'm just speaking from my heart right now about it. I feel the presence of God. God did that, I believe, because God knew that if he would not have done that, I would have never left. And he wanted me to have a real clear understanding between light and dark art.